Welcome to our tutorial on the Sage BusinessWorks version 2018. This video is intended to show you the new features that you can expect to see once you've installed the new Sage BusinessWorks 2018. Tax table updates have been included for the states of Illinois, Kansas, Idaho, and Indiana. If you have payroll in any one of these states, you'll want to make sure you get updated to the version 2018 as soon as possible. Also in the payroll module, a new deduction type has been created with a method of a percent of hourly rate after a set limit. That's included in the payroll, utilities, maintain deductions. Now when you create a new deduction, on the method, we've now included a method called percent of base hourly pay exempt. This allows you to enter an exempt hourly wage. So let's say, for example, some states, such as the state of California, have now changed the way that some garnishments are handled. That deduction needs to be calculated on a percent of the base hour rate after it hits a limit. So let's say, for example, the deduction is 25% of all hourly wages after a $10 an hour rate. So if we enter a limit here of $10 an hour and then save this, and then if we add that deduction to our employee called Akins, we'll go to the deductions and we'll add that deduction called new, and we're going to put it in here as 25% and OK and save. Now we want to make sure we go to the pay info, and we can see that the pay rate is $15.95. We're going to make $20 and say OK and save. So now if we go to payroll, create a time card for our employee Akins. I'm not going to use the standard time card, I'm just going to use the 40 hours at a $20 an hour. For the deductions, I'm going to remove everything, all the deductions that we have here, except that new deduction, which is going to be that 25% after the $10 an hour limit. So I'm going to save that, save my time card. Now when I do the automatic payroll calculation and I preview the payroll register, I can see that it deducted $100. This calculation can get a little complex if you have a lot of line item detail on the time card. This calculation is pretty easy to determine. The $10 an hour is our limit. So $10 times the 40 hours is $400. The regular earnings was $800. If we take the $800 minus the $400, that leaves us with $400. If we take that times our 25%, that's $100. We can now see how this new deduction is calculating. In the payroll parameters, we've added two new options under payroll utilities, maintain payroll parameters. The first option is on the sick and the vacation hours. We have the option to restrict the accrual. Now, if these boxes are unchecked, and we put a rate of 80 hours for our employee, it may continue to accrue beyond the 80 hours. However, this new option will allow you to restrict that and say, I do not want you to accrue beyond 80 hours. To see an example, I have an employee, my employee Akins. If I look at the vacation, I can see that the vacation rate is 80 hours. My employee has already earned 80 hours. Now remember, I've already entered a time card for my employee Akins, so let's just calculate that time card again after making the change in the vacation hours, and let's say OK. And I now get a message that one or more of the employees has reached the maximum vacation, sick pay, or comp time limit. Go ahead and preview this to the screen. This, of course, is just calculating our payroll register, is not going to show the accruals. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick hand check just to go ahead and process this check. And we'll put our date in here and post it. And now if I look at my employee and maintain employees and look at the vacation, we can see that it did not accrue beyond the 80-hour maximum that I set in the parameters. Now let's see what happens if I remove that restriction. So let's go back into our maintain payroll parameters, and I'm going to zero out my hours and remove the checkbox. So now I'm going to say OK. And again, let's look at our employee Akins. Check the vacation hours and make sure that it's at 80 hours. So we've said that 80 hours is what the rate is. They've already earned that. So now we're going to go ahead and do another time card for Akins. Do a quick automatic payroll calculation. And then we'll do a quick enter hand check so we can post that check. And post. Now if we go in and look at our employee, look at the vacation, we can now see that it's accrued over and above the 80 hours. By default, when you upgrade to version 2018, this restrict accrual will be unchecked. If you want it to restrict on the maximum hours, then you'll need to come in here, check this box, and enter the hours. In addition, we've added another option in the maintain payroll parameters for you to be able to select what default filer, type of filer you are. Are you a Form 941 or 944 filer? Now by default, when you upgrade to version 2018, it's going to default to Form 941. If your company is a 944 filer, then you'll need to select Form 944 and say OK. That selection is what controls the checkbox on your W-3 as to the type of filer that your company is, whether it's 941 or 944. So again, this is going to by default be set to 941 filer. If your company is a 944, you will need to come into this maintain payroll parameters and change that selection to 944. In the maintain employees screen, we've added two new features. One of the new features is we've added a date of birth field. Now this field is available for adding on reports, or if you'd like to select it when you export through custom export. Now just as a note, at this time this field is not used and is not available to send over to Atrix Enhanced Tax Reporting for any of your tax reporting purposes. Right now it's a date of birth field that has been added, and it's available to select on reports, to be added to reports, or exported through custom exports. Also, in maintain employees under the status, we've added a new kind of payer. So over on the left hand side, you'll see kind of payer. The options are regular, agriculture, military, railroad, household, or Medicare government employment. By default, once you upgrade to version 2018, all of your employees will be set to a kind of payer type of regular. Now, as a note, if you in previous versions had employees that were set to an ag employee, so in the status box, the ag employee was checked. When you upgrade to version 2018, it will go through a brief database update. And during that update, it will move all of those employees and set them as a default of agriculture. All other employees will be set to a kind of payer of regular. Now, this is controlling the W-3 and what kind of payer will be selected on the W-3 form. So if you've selected railroad, for this employee, when the W-2s print, this employee will print out the W-2s, and then there will be a single W-3 that's marked as railroad kind of payers that will accompany this employee's W-2. So again, this is only controlling the kind of payer checkbox for the W-3s. So if all of your employees are regular, then they'll go to regular. If you have some that are regular, some that are agriculture, then you're going to have two W-3s. You're going to have a W-3 for those that are marked as regular, W-3 for those that are marked as agriculture. Now also, this change can be made globally under Payroll, Employees, Employee Global Change. You can include all the employees, select certain range of pay periods, pay type, or employment status, and when we select the data to change, the very last item is kind of payer. So you can select to change only those that are set to regular, to possibly agriculture or household, but this change can be made globally using this global change feature. Moving on to the general ledger. In previous versions, when exporting the detailed trial balance to Excel, the general ledger account numbers did not export. Now, in the version 2018, when you do the trial balance, if you look at the list, a new report called XLS Trial Balance Detailed has now been added. If we select this and then preview it to the screen, we'll now be able to export this to an XLS data format, and we'll see that our account numbers are now included. So again, that's not going to be on the trial balance detailed. If you want to see those account numbers, you're going to have to select the XLS trial balance detailed. So this is just the plain trial balance detailed. When we export it, you'll see there are no account numbers. Select from the list, XLS trial balance detailed. In the inventory control module, under Utilities, Maintain Purchase Order Preferences, a new option has been added allowing the users to control if you want the reprint purchase order box to appear. By default, when you upgrade to version 2018, this box will be checked to allow reprint of purchase orders. If that is checked, if we go in here to maintain purchase orders, print a purchase order, if we print the first one, I'm going to print mine to a PDF printer, then it comes up with the screen to reprint. If you don't want that screen to continually come up, forcing you to have to do another keystroke to close that down, then just go into Inventory Control, Utilities, Maintain Purchase Order Preferences, remove that check mark, say OK. Now when we go into Maintain Purchase Orders, Print, and we hit our Print button, we do not get the option to reprint our forms. In Accounts Payable and Cash Management module, the check register now has a checkbox to include payroll checks. If we bring up our Accounts Payable Reports check register, we're going to see that at the bottom on the left we have an option to include payroll checks. That same option is in Cash Management Reports check register, include payroll checks. Now by default, once you've upgraded to version 2018, this box will be checked. Now if you have employees that will be accessing the check register through accounts payable or cash management, and you would like to exclude the display of the payroll checks, then you'll have to do that through the Utilities, Maintain Users. I'm going to bring up a user, and any user, I'm going to select all here, but any user that has access to Maintain Employees will have access to that checkbox to include the payroll checks. If the employee does not have access to payroll, so we'll go in as that employee, and let's go into Accounts Payable, Reports, Check Register. we're going to see now that that include payroll checks box is grayed out, not even allowing me to select to view payroll checks. If I now preview, let's do our June checks and preview this to the screen, we're going to see some EFT checks. We're going to see instant checks, our vendor checks from accounts payable, but our payroll checks are not included. So let's compare those two reports. I'm now logged in as manager or a user that has access to maintain employees. I'm going to look at my check register. I now have the checkbox to include payroll checks. I'm going to do it by check number, the sort, and I'm going to select only for my June 2016 checks. Preview it to the screen, and now I can see all of my payroll checks are included, as compared to the user who does not have access to payroll. So payroll checks have been excluded. Good feature that's been added. In accounts receivable and order entry, you can now select the payment type that you would like to use as a default when you're posting payments in either the accounts receivable or order entry module. Now, in previous versions, the default was to a payment type of cash. Now, in version 2018, if we go to accounts receivable, utilities, maintain AR parameters, posting accounts, you'll see over here on the right-hand side, there is a new option of default payment type. This is where you can select if you would like to default to cash, credit card, or check. So if I select check and say OK, if I go in to do an invoice in order entry and pull up my customer, and we'll have a line item on here so we can get a dollar amount. Now when we go to the summary screen to add that payment, we can see that it defaults to check instead of cash as it always did in the past. Now you can change that if you want to. This just eliminates the possibility of making a mistake and posting it to cash. As we all know, posting a payment to cash is not always as easy to void out as a check or a credit card. So this is a nice feature. Again, that's in accounts receivable, utilities, maintain AR parameters, posting accounts. Once you upgrade to version 2018, the payment type is going to be defaulted to cash. So you'll want to come in here to the parameters and select your default type, get that set, and then start working. And the last new features are two new reports that we've added in order entry. Under order entry, reports part sales by customer report. In previous versions, when you exported the part sales by customer report to an Excel data file, if we bring that up and we export it out to Excel, it did not include the part number and it didn't have the customer ID. A new report's been added, and that report's called the XLS Part Sales by Customer Report. Now when we preview that to screen, we export it to Excel. It now includes the customer ID as well as the part number and description of the part. Now again, this is in the order entry reports part sales by customer report. The regular part sales by customer report is going to be the same and will not include the customer ID or part ID when you export it to Excel. You'll want to make sure you look at the list and select the XLS part sales by customer report in order to get the customer ID and part number to display when you export it out to Excel. The second new report that was added is under order entry reports gross profit report. Now in previous versions, when you would preview the gross profit report to screen and export it to Excel in a data format, the customer ID and the invoice number is omitted. So we can see that we have part numbers and descriptions, our quantities and costs and prices, but no customer ID or invoice number. In version 2018, a new report's been added. From the list, you'll select XLS Gross Profit Report and accept. When we preview it to the screen, this time export it to Excel data format, you'll now see that the invoice number and the customer fields have now exported out to Excel. Now, all these new features that were added in the Sage BusinessWorks version 2018 were from enhancement requests that were submitted by you, our customers. We encourage you to let us know what features you would like to see added to the program. You can always submit an enhancement request directly from your Sage BusinessWorks by going to Help, and then Support and Service on the web, Submit Enhancement Suggestion. It'll bring up an email to our bwenhance@sage.com. Enter in the body what features you would like to see added to the program, along with a good business reason as to why this feature would be helpful. Now, submitting an enhancement request does not guarantee that that feature is going to be added to the program, but it does let our marketing team hear from our customers as to what features that you would like to see added to the program. We certainly hope you enjoy these new features that have been added to the Sage BusinessWorks version 2018. This now concludes our presentation. Thank you for joining us today.